Good evening, everybody. We'll get started in just a few minutes. We're just going to give everybody time to join the webinar, and then we'll get started right after that. Okay, so kia ora, everybody. It looks like the attendees are leveling out, so I'm just going to get started, get going. So if you came here today hoping to hear a New Zealand accent, I'm really sorry to disappoint you. I'm actually American myself. My name's Alex Glidden, and I'm calling you today from a locked down Wellington, New Zealand. So yeah, before we get started with the rest of the presentation, I think it's good to talk a bit about my background and how I got here and what the COVID situation is in New Zealand at the moment. So firstly, I am from Connecticut. So I was looking through some of the states that you all were putting down in the chat. I didn't see anyone from Connecticut. I see a couple of New Yorks, which is close by, so that's great. But no Connecticut. So if there's any Connecticut's, please make yourselves known. I did my undergrad at the University of Connecticut. And then once I finished, I did my grad school here in New Zealand, and I have never left. And now it's my job to talk to other students from the US about New Zealand and why it's such a great place to live and study. Still no Connecticut's, it looks like, but lots of other states represented. So, COVID. Obviously, you might have heard that New Zealand, for the most part, has eliminated the virus, which means that we have not had community transmission of the virus for most of the time that COVID has been around. We've had two separate lockdowns. The first lockdown was last year and everybody was locked down. It lasted about 2 months. But then we eliminated all the transmission in the country. And so we were basically free for a year and a half. And we've just had an outbreak of the Delta variant in the city of Auckland. And so we're currently locked down now for another couple of weeks. Case numbers are going down. And so we expect to be out of that lockdown in a few weeks. Now, one of the reasons why we have had so much success dealing with COVID is because we've heavily restricted entry into the country. So right now, no one can come into New Zealand unless you're a citizen or a resident. And when you do come in, no matter who you are, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks, whether you're vaccinated or not, or no matter what country you're coming from. So because of that, that means that students like you can't actually come to New Zealand just yet. But it won't be like that forever. The vaccination effort here in New Zealand is ramping up quickly. And once most of the population is vaccinated, I would expect that things will get better and the borders will start to crack open. So for that reason, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it's like to study in New Zealand as an undergraduate student to do your bachelor's here. I'll talk a little bit about what New Zealand's like as a study abroad student and what it's like as a grad student like I was. And the reason why is maybe you're watching this and you're saying, I don't want to do my whole degree in New Zealand because, it's very far away and I don't know with COVID if I'll be able to go. But maybe you want to come in a couple years for 1 semester on a study abroad program. Or maybe you'll finish your entire undergraduate degree and you'll say, hey, 4 years ago, I heard about New Zealand and now I want to go back to do grad school. All of those things are options here, and I'm going to talk about them in my presentation. We will have time at the end for questions. So if you don't mind saving your questions till the end, that'd be much appreciated. So where are we, quite simply? Kind of in the middle of nowhere, to be honest. We're in the South Pacific. Our closest massive neighbor is Australia. We had an open border with them until recently when they had their own COVID outbreak. We're about an 11-hour flight from Los Angeles. It is a long flight, but it's kind of nice. Usually there's lots of movies and food, so it's not so bad. But we are quite isolated down here, which has its pros and its cons. There's only 5 million people. So we're about the size of a small US state, but a lot bigger than most states with 5 million people. I saw someone in the chat was from Wyoming, which is another big area with not a lot of people. You can kind of picture that kind of vibe for New Zealand. We do have some big cities, but in between the big cities, there's basically nothing. A lot of empty open space, which is great because it's a beautiful country, as I'm sure you've seen. We've been ranked the second most peaceful country by the World Peace Index in 2019. There's not a lot of political instability here, not a lot of, it's crazy people, but kind of a different kind of crazy than you might be used to. We're about the size of the Japan of Japan or the UK. So similar island nations, but we have way less people. We have about 1/16 of the people of Japan. They have 80 million people. We're ranked first in the Human Freedom Index, which means you can kind of do, freedom in the sense that we have freedom of press, freedom of religion, those sorts of things. We are the least corrupted country in the world, according to the Corruption Index of 2019. And you don't really care about English-speaking students because you probably all speak English, but if you don't, we are the top English-speaking country in the world for educating students for the future. So, Wellington. Wellington is the capital of New Zealand. It's where I am right now. It's where the university is, Victoria University of Wellington. And about 500,000 people live here. Geographically, it's a bit similar to San Francisco in that it's very hilly and it's right near the ocean. We have the highest median income in New Zealand. There's a lot of jobs here because the government is here. So it's very easy to find a job. There's a lot of coastline, 500 kilometers, which is about 350 miles. So lots of coastline. Lots of forests and parks. The whole city is ring fenced by a series of parks that you can hike in, mountain bike in, and do other recreational activities. And we have more cafes per capita than New York City. So if you like your coffee, you like your snacks, we don't have Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, unfortunately. I really miss Dunkin' Donuts, but we do have other coffee options. So it's a good place to come if you like coffee and food. It's a safe city. People often remark how safe they feel walking around here compared to where they're from. And that's not just the US, it's kind of all over the world. It's diverse. About 1 out of every 3 people was not born in New Zealand. And so there's a lot of diversity in the city. It's a creative city. So you might have heard, so Lord of the Rings is obviously New Zealand's kind of biggest film export. And that's all made here in Wellington. Not shot, it's shot all over the country, but the actual filmmaking is done here in Wellington. It's high tech. There's a lot of startups here because it's a big student city. There's a lot of that innovative culture that you look for. Clean and green, as I mentioned, the whole city is ringed by parks and hikes. It's easy to get around. It's compact. It's a dense, compact city, easy to walk around. Most people walk to and from work and university. I do, and I did when I was a student. Even now, I live about 15 minutes walking to work, which is the university. Of course, when we're not locked down, I'm not going there now. So the university. Victoria University of Wellington, we have about 22,000 students. So we're not as big as some of the massive US state universities like the Cal State universities or some of the ones in the South. We're about as big as sort of the mid-sized state universities. So I went to UConn, as I mentioned. UConn's about a similar size as our university. We have 3 campuses that you can go to. We have 140 plus clubs and societies you can join, 4 libraries, almost 200 partner universities. So if we were in a situation where international travel was, easy to do, you can go on exchange once you're here. So you could come study in New Zealand and then go on exchange to another country and then come back to New Zealand. So you get like a double international experience. There's a lot of research done. We have 43 research institutes, and our students come from over 100 countries in the world. And we've made a pledge to be zero carbon by 2030. And we're ranked the top New Zealand university in sustainability by the Times Higher Education Sustainability Rankings. So it is something that we take seriously as being the capital city university. It's up to us to show leadership in this space, and we're trying to do that. It's the #1 university in New Zealand for research intensity, which I know sounds like what does that mean? Basically means that it's a high amount of high quality research, which means that there's a lot of research that gets done here that gets cited and used in other research publications. We're top 100 in the world in 11 subjects, and that's the top 1% of the world in 19 subject areas. Our business school is accredited by 3 big international bodies, and it's one of only a few schools which are. And we were ranked the second most livable city in 2019. I think we dropped to fourth in the most recent one of those rankings, still top 10. So that's quite good. And so what could you actually study here? So I know when you're at your age, you're in high school, you're not really sure. Some of you might have a very clear idea what you want to study. Some of you might have no idea. Both are fine. You have time. But here are the main sort of things that you can study here. If you're interested in architecture or building science, landscape architecture, interior design, those sorts of things, we have that. All sorts of business qualifications, all sorts of government study you can do. Again, given that we're in the capital, we have a strong sort of political science, international relations, and public policy programs. Design, film, and media. So that's both sort of the practical applications. So, filmmaking, designing things, but also just like the academic study of film, academic study of media. So we have all those sorts of programs. You can train to become a New Zealand teacher if you'd like. We have that. You can do engineering, software engineering mostly, electrical engineering. We don't have anything civil or construction, but we do have software and electrical engineering. We have public health. So we don't have a health school in the sense that you can't become a doctor, but you can study public health, health promotion, and other health-related subjects. The humanities courses you might be interested in, sociology, political science, anthropology, those sorts of things. We have all of those subjects here. We have law. So here in New Zealand, students take law as an undergraduate degree, meaning that you don't have to go to like a grad school, law school once you're done. You can actually become a lawyer after just getting your bachelor's here in New Zealand. But to take that back to the States takes a bit of work, but you can become a lawyer in New Zealand if you'd like. We have music and theater for the creatively inclined students on the chat in the call. We have hard and soft sciences. Obviously, our biology and marine biology programs are very popular given our location to the ocean, but we have physics, chemistry, and those sorts of things too. And of course, social sciences as well. So we have a very broad curriculum, a lot of options, a lot of majors you can take. Okay. So the campuses. That's a nice picture of Wellington there. And those are where the campuses are located. I'll go through each one a little bit. So the Pipitea campus is located in the center of the city, literally across the street from the New Zealand Parliament building, so the equivalent of the White House. And this campus is where you'll study business and law. Our Kelburn campus is a central campus and is located on a hill above the city, so great views. You can kind of see in the corner there, the gym, where you can see the city from the gym. It's really gorgeous. The Kelburn campus is the main one. It's where I work when I'm working on campus, and it's where most of our degrees are taught, is Kelburn campus. So yeah, you'll see education, engineering, health, humanities, social sciences, music and science. So all those qualifications you'll learn at the Kelburn campus. And then we have the Tearo campus, and this is located also in the center of the city. It's where you do architecture and design. The campuses are all probably about 10 to 30 minutes between them. So you'll never have to take a bus if you don't want to. You can always walk. It's pretty close. If you are in a rush, you can take a bus. There's lots of buses in the city, but students often walk between the campuses. It's not something where you'll have to drive. So I'll just skip this slide, actually. So how do you actually get in? If you wanted to apply, how do you do so? So I know in the US, you're sort of used to an environment where you have to write all these essays, you have to get letters of recommendation, and sometimes it's not really clear what a university's requirements are. It feels like it's kind of pick and choose, and you don't really know if you're going to get in. New Zealand's different. New Zealand has what's called a guaranteed admissions process, meaning if you meet the requirements that we've set out, you're going to get in. The bad side of that is if you don't meet the requirements, it means that it's harder to make an exception. But the good side of it is if you do meet the requirements, that means you know you're going to get in, which means you don't have to write an essay, you don't have to get recommendation letters. And just a reminder, this is just for undergraduate admissions. Grad school is quite a bit different, but undergraduate admissions is guaranteed. So for the US, we ask for an SAT score of 1,160 out of 1,600, or an ACT score of 24, and then a completed high school degree, obviously. If you have those requirements, you're going to get in. It's that simple. And you can apply online. And again, there's no fee, no essay, no recommendation letters. You just need to send us your academic transcript, your test scores, your passport, and an application form. It's really easy. And again, it's a much less stressful process than some places are. I remember being quite stressed about my college essay and all those sorts of things, but it's just not how it works in New Zealand. It's much different. Credit transfer. So let's say you do a year of study at a school in the US, and then you want to transfer here to finish your degree. You can do that, and you can get credit transfer from your institution in the US to New Zealand. You just have to send us a syllabus for every course that you would like credit for. So if you are thinking about this, just save all your course syllabus and then send them to us with your application, and we can give you credit for those. Study abroad. So let's say maybe you don't want to come for a whole undergraduate degree. It seems a bit scary, or maybe COVID makes it impossible. You can still come later on for a one-semester study abroad program. And the admission requirement for that is a 2.7 GPA. So I think that's a B minus. So that is an option. A lot of American students do that, as I'm sure you might know. If you've talked to what people in college, study abroad is something that's people are pushing it. They say it's important. And so you can do that if you want. We have a lot of American study abroad students in the best of times when our borders are open. So keep that in mind if New Zealand interests you, but you're just not quite sure about doing a whole degree here. Let's say you get all the way to the end of your degree, you've gotten your bachelor's, and you want to do grad school here like I did. You need to have your bachelor's degree needs to have a B average, so a 3.0 GPA. And some programs have additional requirements. So this is where you actually might need to do your essay, and you might need to include a resume with your application. Depends on the program. I did a Master of Arts, which was a thesis-based program, which meant I had to include a research proposal, but it's different depending on the program. The one good thing is you don't need to do the GRE, so that saves you about $1,000 and a lot of stress. You just need to have a degree with the right average, and then you need to do a few other things depending on your program. So, key dates. We have a trimester-based system here. So in the US, you have fall semester and spring semester. Fall semester goes from September to December, and spring goes from January to May. That's not how it is in New Zealand. New Zealand, we're on the southern hemisphere, which means everything's flipped, and we have 3 different trimesters. The academic year starts in trimester 1. So most students will come in trimester 1, and it goes from March to late June. We also have trimester 2, which is right after, July to November. Now there is a trimester 3, but this is basically summer school because it's summer here during those times. And you don't have to study in summer. Most students take it off, but if you want to, you can. So that means most students will come in trimester 1 in March, and then they'll have a break in November after trimester 2. The application deadline for trimester 1 is the December 1st, the year before. So let's say you're graduating high school in 2022, and maybe you want to come to New Zealand in February 2023 for trimester 1. You would need to apply by the 1st of December to make that happen. So funding and scholarships. So we have a general undergraduate scholarship you can apply for called Tongarewa, and that gives you $5,000 to $10,000 towards your tuition fees. If you do end up doing a postgraduate degree or grad school degree, you can get scholarships for that. But the most important thing is that we have US financial aid. So we are a full participant in the US financial aid program, and we can help you figure out and administer your US financial aid. So I came here on financial aid. It's actually one of the reasons why I did. I got a loan for it, which I'm still paying back, obviously, but I got one, and it paid for my school. And I think it's worth addressing that studying your degree overseas can actually be more affordable in some cases. Now, I went to UConn, and many of you might go to state schools, which have pretty cheap tuition if you're from the state. But if you're looking out of state, or if you're looking at private options, those universities can often be very expensive. Upwards of $50,000 to $70,000 US a year for tuition. Our programs mostly cost around $20,000 to $25,000 US per year. And that can be covered by financial aid. And that's about half as much as those private options, or even a third in some cases. It's not cheap, and I don't mean to say that it is cheap. It's still, that's a lot of money. But when compared to some of the more expensive options in the US, it's definitely not quite as painful on the wallet. So keep that in mind. So if you do have questions about financial aid specifically, because I know that financial aid is quite a personal topic, you all might have a lot of personal circumstances you need help with, you can always contact our financial aid office at the email on the screen. So yeah, please keep that in mind if you're interested. And we have a whole website dedicated to US financial aid too. So you can always ask us questions if you need to know more information. Okay, so I'm going to transition to a section about the student experience, kind of what your life as a student here might be like. Obviously, US universities are known for their student experience. Kids who grow up here in New Zealand always ask me about, did you guys have all those like frats and dining halls and all that stuff that they see on the movies about US universities? And I say, yes, those movies are all correct. The US university experience is a lot like these movies sometimes. New Zealand's a bit different. We have some things which are similar, but some things which are different than what you might expect for the college life in the US. So we do have dorms, we do have accommodation for students. We have 14 different options, and about half of them have dining halls. So if you want that dining hall experience where you just rock on down to the dining hall, get food, and then go home, you can do that. If you think that you're quite a good cook and you'd like to just stay with on-campus housing but cook your own food, you can do that too. International students, when they start with us, are guaranteed accommodation. So that means if you do want to come and you're worried about accommodation, we can guarantee it if you apply for it. There is support in the halls. Obviously, if you were to come to New Zealand, you'd be away from home in a new country, a lot to learn, a lot of things you're not familiar with, and a lot of stresses which you might not be used to. And you can get support for all those things in the hall and at the university. But each hall has what's called a student support coordinator who can meet with you about these things and just kind of talk you through any issues you might be having. All of the halls are within walking distance from the campus and the central city. As I mentioned, Wellington's very compact. So that means there's lots of space for you to walk. You don't have to drive. Most people don't actually have cars here. So it's quite good. So this is Everton Hall, some photos of it. It is an apartment style accommodation, so it's usually for grad students. But if you think that you're a great cook and you want to live like this, you can. You'll share a common area with a few other students, but you'll have your own room. Now, I know in the US, it's really common to have roommates where you have two people in the same room. In New Zealand, that's much less common. You'll most likely have a single room. So for some students, that's great because they get more privacy, more space. But some students really like that roommate style. But the halls have lots of social events that will bring you together. So if you have your own room, there'll still be social events you can attend where you can meet everybody else in the hall. Joan Stevens is more equivalent to like what you might stay in as a freshman. So if you come here and you're a freshman, you can stay at Joan Stevens or one of our other halls with a dining hall. You'll see in the corner is a picture of the students getting food. Now, being from the US, we're used to just the dining halls in the US are a whole nother level. The amount of food you can get and the variety is incredible. It's good here, but it's not the same. So just keep that in mind. The US dining hall experience is very unusual, but it's great. Don't get me wrong, but it's not quite the same here. The food's good, but it's not as good as the US. But it's there if you want it. And you can get your meals with your friends. You don't have to worry about cooking. It's just one thing you can kind of not worry about as a student in a new country. But as I mentioned, you'll probably have your own room. There won't be another student in it, but you'll be encouraged to make friends with the students on your floor and in your hall. Okay, so student life. We have something called O-Week, which is New Student Orientation. It's a week-long program with special events for international students and other events where you can meet the Kiwi students. So Kiwi is a term for someone from New Zealand. And so it's a really good way to get used to the campus, get used to the city and meet other students. And again, it goes for a whole week and there's just jam-packed with events. You'll be probably busy from 9 o'clock in the morning to like midnight if you want to be. Lots to do. There's over 180 clubs and societies. I think I said 140 earlier, but there's actually more than that. I think it's getting close to 200 because students make their own clubs all the time. There's tons of clubs, basically. So you'll see at the top VUWTC. That stands for Victoria University of Wellington Tramping Club. Now, tramping is what people in New Zealand call hiking. And obviously, New Zealand is a pretty beautiful natural environment. And so people like to go hiking to explore it. And there's a club here where you can go on big hikes with other students. So it's a good option for people who aren't from here so they can see more of the country. We have an international buddy program where you will be matched up with a current New Zealand-based student so that you can meet someone from New Zealand who can kind of be your friend and take you around. I was a member of this program as a student, and I found it really valuable. I'm still friends with the person I was matched with, and I got to go stay with that person's family over the holidays because I couldn't go home. And that meant I basically got free accommodation in a nice part of New Zealand, so that was good. There's an International Students Association, so you can meet with other international students from other countries. So as I mentioned, we have over 100 countries represented here, so you can meet a lot of people from all over the world. So student support. Now, usually, in these webinars, you hear about all the great things that happen when you study overseas or when you study at a new university or when you go to college. But obviously, just like anything else, things come up, stresses happen, issues happen, and you need help when they do, especially if you're a student overseas. You might be by yourself. You might not have any family around, so you need to have that support. So we understand that, and we try to take it, quite seriously. There's a special international orientation that you can join so that you can meet other international students and learn about the university. I mentioned the buddy program already. We have somebody who can help you with immigration issues. So, you'll need what's called a student visa to study here, but we have someone who can help you with that. We have a language learning center. So, if English isn't your first language, you can learn more English, but if you want to learn another language, you can learn it at the language learning center. We have academic support, so people who can help you with your essays, help you with research projects, or just help you with any sort of academic issue you might have. We do have health insurance for all international students. And being from the US, I brag about this all the time because I know what insurance is like in the US. You can have full insurance in New Zealand with no copays, where every medical issue you have can be fully covered, and it costs $670 per year. And that's New Zealand dollars. So that's like 450 US dollars, and that's per year. There'll be lots of people in the US who pay that much per month for their health insurance. It's just a totally different world here when it comes to healthcare. And that's because it's a public system. So your healthcare here will be very good, and you won't spend that much for it. So that's definitely a plus. Disability services. So students with learning differences or students who need accommodations for essays or other things can get them through our disability services team. We have a career service team. So let's say you come to New Zealand and you want to get a part-time job, they can help you with that. Or if you're looking to get a job after you graduate, they can look at your resume and make sure you're saying all the right things. We have support services for what we call here rainbow students, the rainbow community. So we have dedicated staff who help those students sort of answer any questions, help them integrate, or just help rainbow students, whatever it is they might need. And we have an on-campus health center. So as I mentioned, as an international student with insurance, you can use that for free. So that's quite good. Okay, next up we have work rights. So as I mentioned, if you come to New Zealand, you'll be on what's called a student visa. The purpose of the student visa is to allow you to study in New Zealand, but the visa also allows you to do part-time work. So you can work for 20 hours per week while you're studying, or you can work full-time in between years. So as I mentioned, there's a summer break, so you can work full-time during summer break. If you finish your degree in New Zealand, so let's say you come here to do a Bachelor of Arts or something, when you finish, you can apply for a 3-year open work visa. I mean, you can work at anywhere in New Zealand that you want for 3 years. Now, I imagine, you wouldn't be too interested in studying online, but if you were, you obviously don't need a visa. If you're in the US and you want to study online with us, you don't need a visa to do so. Okay, so I'm going to transition to a quiz. So what I'm going to need you to do is put your answer into the chat. There are 3 questions, and I'll look at the chat and see if anyone's got the right answer. So get your fingers ready, and we're going to transition to the quiz. Okay. So this will test if you're paying attention. So New Zealand is home to a few musicians who have achieved worldwide fame. This artist, and it's not the one pictured is Lord, and it's not Lord. This artist wrote the 2020 hit Super Lonely. So please put your answer into the chat. I'm not seeing any messages here. I'm not sure if it's my fault. Oh, wait, no, there's somebody. Oh, I got a couple people. All right, no idea from Justine. Brian says Bene, so does Layla and Adianis and Malik. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of people saying Bene, yes. So all of you are right. It is Bene. So she is 21 and she's from Auckland, actually the same city as Lord. Both of them are from Auckland. So as you know, New Zealand has quite a few young musicians who are, getting pretty popular. I don't know where Bene is now. She's probably locked down somewhere up in Auckland. But yeah, so good job. A lot of people got that one. This one will be a bit harder. This New Zealand-born filmmaker has directed Thor Ragnarok, Jojo Rabbit, and an episode of The Mandalorian. This will be, if anyone gets this, I'll be quite impressed. Oh yeah, Deborah's got it. Janelle's got it. I can't see her full name, so if I'm saying it wrong, I'm sorry. I just see the first 6 letters. But yes, the 2 people who answered got it right. And Mallory got it right as well. It is Taika Waititi. So Taika Waititi did study at Victoria University of Wellington, as if you needed any more reasons to consider studying here. You can be a great director with a great mustache like Taika Waititi. So yeah, he is an alum of this university. All right, final question. This bird, and I answered this already, so if you were paying attention, you should know. All right, people are already answering, so I guess I don't even need to say this. Good job, guys. Everyone's gotten it right. So good job. It is a Kiwi bird. Kiwi birds are the unofficial mascot of New Zealand, and they are heavily protected. So there's lots of reserves in New Zealand where Kiwi birds are roaming around. You often don't see them in the wild because they're nocturnal. So you probably won't see it if you're just walking through the woods. But there are places you can go where they have kiwis in enclosures where you can go and have a look. They're actually quite big. They're about the size of turkeys. So I'm from the Northeast, and turkeys are everywhere all the time. And kiwis are about the same size. So they're pretty big, but they're a lot cuter than turkeys, if I might be so bold. And they are the national bird. Okay, so we've made it to the end of my presentation. So, I realized I went kind of quick. I have a tendency to talk fast sometimes, but just because I'm so excited about New Zealand, I've lived here for about 6 years now. I still love it. Hopefully I'll stay here forever. And now I want to give you all the chance to ask some questions. So the Q&A section on Zoom, Courtney has mentioned in the chat, you can drop them in the Q&A window if you're interested in asking questions. And it doesn't matter what it is. If I don't know, I'll do my best to figure it out. But any questions on your mind, just feel free to pop them into the Q&A. Do you have to send, so anonymous attendee has asked, do you have to send both ACT and SAT scores? And the answer is no. We need one or the other. And just to remind you all, the ACT score we look for is 24, and the SAT score we look for is 1160. So one or the other, not both. That's a very good question. Thank you for asking it. Okay, AJ Lawson has put into the chat, can IB classes or the diploma be recognized and used to gain college credit? So the diploma, yes. The diploma can be used as to gain admission. Getting credit is a case-by-case basis, but if you send us the outline of the courses that you're taking for your IB diploma, then you might be able to get credit for them. But for admission to university, if you successfully complete the IB, then yes, you can get admission for that. Okay, so quite a few questions are coming in. Can parents come visit? So pre-COVID, absolutely. COVID's obviously made everything a bit unusual, as I'm sure you all appreciate. But in normal times, yes, parents can come visit. Mine did, so yeah, they can come. I'm going to save the what you love most about New Zealand to the end, but I will definitely answer that because I do have a psychology program. Yes, we do. You can study psychology here under the Bachelor of Science. So it's a major under the Bachelor of Science. So we do have psychology. Is there a linguistics program? Yes, there is. That is under the Bachelor of Arts. So we do have a linguistics major. So there's a couple questions about med school, and there's a question here about being a travel nurse. So we don't have a medical school here. We have some health-related subjects like public health and health promotion, but to be a practicing nurse or to go to med school to be a doctor, we don't have that, unfortunately. If you're interested in New Zealand and you are looking to be in med school, I would look at the University of Auckland. They have a very big med school. So just think about that if that's what you're interested in. Okay, so there's two questions I'm going to answer live at the end, I think. For the health insurance, how much does it cost within a year? So 670 New Zealand dollars is how much it costs. And that's about 450 US dollars. So it's a completely different world in terms of costs for healthcare in a better way. It's much cheaper. So you'll get full health coverage for 450 US dollars a year. Music. Yes, we do have a Bachelor of Music. We have a whole degree for music majors. There's composition, there's music theory, there's performance. So we do have music options if you're interested in something like that. Okay. Animation. We do have an animation and visual effects program. The degree that it's under is called the Bachelor of Design Innovation. And one of the majors within that degree is animation and visual effects. It's a pretty new major here, which is cool because that means that, you know, there are a lot of like young lecturers, and it's just a cool program. So we do have that. Is there a dental school? No, unfortunately. I actually don't know where there is a dental school in New Zealand. I know there is one because we have dentists, but I don't know where it is. We don't have one, unfortunately, so apologies. Do AP credits count? So it's a case-by-case thing. So obviously in the US, it's easy to get AP credits recognized because US colleges and universities understand what AP is and will recognize it automatically. Because New Zealand is different, we can recognize AP credits, but you need to send the basically a summary of the course that you took, whether it's AP English, AP History, or whatever, so that our team can see if we can give you college credit for that. So the answer to AP credits question is maybe, basically, which I know isn't very helpful sometimes, but maybe is the answer. Aeronautical engineer degree. Unfortunately, we don't have aeronautics here, or that kind of engineering. Athletics, we don't have it the same way that you do in the States. There are college sports teams here, but it's not even close to the same level of investment or competition level, frankly. It's one of the biggest adjustments that I had to make myself as a student. I went to, obviously, I've said it a million times, I'm sorry to keep repeating myself, but I went to UConn. We have great basketball teams. Our football team's not very good, but it's still fun to go see them. That's not a thing here. It's just not. There is a sports culture here, but not at college. So you can play, but it'll be much more casually. So not the same way as you would in the States. Journalism, yes, we do have that. It's within what's called the media studies major. So you would take a major in media studies and then focus on journalism within that major. The deadline for trimester 3, which again begins in November, is September 1st. So September 1st is the deadline if you want to come study in November. Total cost, including accommodations. So I'll go through each sort of cost in general. A degree will normally cost you about, as I mentioned, 20 to 25,000 US dollars per year, depending on what you study. Accommodation would be about 900 US dollars a month. And so for 1 year, I'm just doing the math in my head, that's about 10,800 US dollars a year, plus 20 to 25,000 US dollars for tuition. And then you're looking at about 30 to 35,000 yearly total cost for accommodation and tuition. Okay, last two questions. These are the fun ones. What made you decide to study in New Zealand? From Deborah Wright. So it's actually not a very interesting story, frankly. I wanted to study abroad. I wanted to do my grad school somewhere else. And I don't do well in the hot weather. I really like it where it's kind of colder. And so I saved up some money and I looked at Scotland, I looked at Norway, and I looked at New Zealand. New Zealand was the cheapest option. And so I was like, oh, I'm just going to go there. I ended up loving it when I got here, obviously. And that will transition to the second question, which is what do you love most about New Zealand? And I think it's frankly just the lifestyle difference. So like many of you, my dad worked, 60 hours a week, never had any vacation time. He worked really hard and obviously provided for me and my family, which I really, I'm privileged to have that. But I didn't really see much of him, and I think he kind of regrets that. New Zealand's just different. People here focus on their life more than their work for the most part. The government requires all employers to give employees 20 days off a year, and many places will give you more than that. And most of New Zealand takes all of the holiday period off in December. So between Christmas and New Year's is off from work. Again, the healthcare being cheap is a nice change. So all those sorts of things, just the lifestyle, it's a lot more relaxed. People focus on their hobbies, they focus on their interests. The US has this sort of rise and grind culture where you're getting up and working all the time. And that's some people that really works for them, but for some people you need something a bit more balanced, and I'm one of those people. So that's kind of what I like the most. Okay, so there's another question here from Bhupinder. So what are the requirements for health insurance and how long will it remain with the student? So health insurance is done on a yearly basis. So you'll pay while you're a student, you have health insurance the whole time. And it costs 450 US dollars a year. And you have it the whole time you're here as a student. You can get, once you're done, if you want, let's say you come here, you finish your degree and you want to work and you're not a student anymore, you can get other health insurance that's a little bit more expensive, probably $600 a year, but it is an option. And how long will it remain with the student? So the requirements are, it's basically full health coverage for anything that's not pre-existing. So pre-existing conditions are limited coverage. So basically, if you're just paying for a monthly medication, you have to pay for that. But if you have a pre-existing condition and it gets worse, the insurance will pay for that. So what is taught in law? Is there business law? So yes, there is. It's called commercial law here. What specifically is taught in law? Well, it's a common law system, meaning it's the legal system that's used here, the UK, Singapore, and other Commonwealth countries, Australia. And so there's subjects about contract law, torts, which I don't really know what that means. I just know it's a course, property law, business law, public law, and commercial law, as I mentioned. So those are all kind of the different subjects within law. It's a 4-year degree. Most of our undergraduate degrees are only 3 years, whereas law is 4 years. So I'm just going through the Q&A, getting rid of some of these. Yep. Okay. How do scholarships work over there? So scholarships, they will never be automatic like they might be in the States. You do have to apply for them, and they're completely disconnected from the application process. So you'll apply for university, and then you'll apply for a scholarship at the same time. And one won't affect the other. It wouldn't happen, but in theory, the way that it's done, it's technically possible for you to get a scholarship and not get into the university, but that would never happen, as I mentioned, because we do actually check. But I'm just highlighting that it's different processes. It's like you send in 2 applications for each thing, and they're kind of distant from each other. When New Zealand opens up, would you have to be vaccinated? Good question. I don't know. Right now, people coming into New Zealand don't have to be vaccinated, but that's because we have our quarantine, which is for 2 weeks. I would think it would be some sort of hybrid arrangement where if you're not vaccinated, you have to quarantine for a little bit and get a negative COVID test. Whereas if you're vaccinated, maybe you have to quarantine for like 2 days. So something like that. But it's not official yet, so I can't say for sure. It's a good question, though. Pharmacy school, unfortunately, we don't have that here. Again, we don't have a med school or things related to that. But if you are interested in pharmacy in New Zealand, I would look at University of Auckland. So sorry, no pharmacy school. Xander asked, did I get into outdoor sports like heli-skiing, regular skiing, boarding, rafting, diving, etc.? Most of those, no. I did do rafting. I do a lot of kayaking. I love kayaking. But a lot of people here do those things that you mentioned. Some of our students will take part-time jobs as ski instructors because our ski season's in your summer. And so a lot of students do that. I'm more of a water guy, so I do a lot of kayaking and rafting and swimming, those sorts of things. For the Language Learning Center, what type of languages do you teach? Is Chinese one of the languages? Yes, Chinese is one. There's a lot of Japanese language support, German, Spanish, French, and Italian, and Arabic. Those are the ones that we have the most support for. Chinese and Japanese would be the 2 biggest because we have a ton of Chinese students here. And so that means we have a lot of Chinese language learning. Good question. Do scholarships you earned in the US transfer? Well, I guess it depends on the individual scholarship. It's not automatic. We would have to look at the terms of the scholarship. And yeah. So basically the answer is maybe. Sorry, again, another maybe. But yeah, we'd have to just look at the terms of your scholarship to see how it is. Xander asks, if you have other accommodations like staying with relatives, is that okay? Absolutely. There's no requirements for accommodation at all. I know some places in the States, you're required to live on campus or something. Not the case here. You can live wherever you want at any time. Really? So yeah, good question. Do you know if you're doing your undergrad schooling in New Zealand makes it easier to obtain a dual citizenship? Doing any schooling in New Zealand makes it easier to get dual citizenship, whether it's undergrad or grad school. So the answer to your question is yes, but not just undergrad. Any schooling here will make it easy to get citizenship. So one of the requirements for residency, which is the step before citizenship, essentially our version of a green card. If you have a degree from New Zealand, it's easier to get your New Zealand green card, basically. So yes, it does make it easier. Okay. So I think I've gone through all the questions. So yeah, I'll stay on the line for a bit in case people have more that are kind of going through their mind. If you don't have any more questions, you're free to pop out. And I saw in the chat that the webinar was recorded and will be available on the and so I never say this right the first time, NSHSS website. The webinar will be available there. But I'm here to answer any questions. You got me till 12, so feel free to send me any questions you have. And actually, I might just put my email into the chat if you want it. There you go. And you can get in touch with the people at NSHSS if you forgot who I am, but you want to get in touch with me. They know who I am, so they can get in touch with me too. Thank you, Bianca. I appreciate it. Thank you, Layla. So yeah, have a good rest of your night. And yep, hope to hear from you all soon at some point.